Hey, this is Next Exhale, and I want to talk about how gun control advocates manipulate language in order to influence public opinion on the topic. And specifically, I want to talk about a term that's being used a lot here recently, and that is it's being used by the president, it's being used by other politicians, and hearing it being repeated in the media a lot here recently, and it is the term gun safety measures. Now, I want you to understand that when the term gun safety measures it's being used, what is actually being talked about is gun control. Politicians are smart. You know, their policies might be dumb, but the people themselves are smart. They know how to get what they want, and that's how they got in the positions that they got in. And one of the things that politicians are very good at is using language and understanding how language affects the way we think. A lot of politicians are lawyers, and lawyers are very good with using language and specialize in that. So they bring that kind of expertise to their policy making and the way that they interact with the media and the public. So they know that the term gun control is a term that immediately throws up red flags for a lot of Americans, a lot of gun owners, and there are a lot of gun owners in America. But if they hear this term gun control, immediately the red flag goes up. So in order to get away from that term, we see that politicians are now using this term gun safety measures so that people's defenses don't shoot up immediately. But what they're talking about is gun control. That's exactly what they're talking about. But when they use the term gun safety measures, what it sounds like they're talking about is gun safety. Now, gun safety as a term has been around for years and years and years and years. And nobody would be against gun safety. Even people who own guns are not against gun safety. See, but the thing is, people like myself who own guns know that gun safety refers to the way you handle a firearm safely. And when a politician is using the term gun safety, he's not talking about that, or she's not talking about that. What they are talking about is not handling a gun safely. What they are talking about is registering firearms. They're talking about confiscating firearms. They're talking about banning firearms, restricting firearms. They're talking about gun control. But if they use this term gun safety measures, it's a way to influence the way that people think about the subject of gun control. So now, if they can use the terms or frame their arguments in terms of gun safety measures instead of gun control, then those people who are against, for example, gun confiscation of certain firearms or restrictions of certain firearms or registration of certain firearms or any firearms for that matter, people who are basically pro-Second Amendment, now those people are against gun safety. So that's the way they manipulate language to subtly demonize people who are against gun control. Because if they can frame the argument in terms of gun safety measures instead of gun control, now the opposing side is not against gun control, they're against gun safety. And so if somebody is against gun safety, the logical conclusion is those people are dangerous people. So it's a way to categorize people who are against gun control into a category of dangerous people who are against gun safety. Dangerous people. And it's very manipulative to use this type of language when you're talking about gun control. In addition to using the term gun safety measures, they add to that term the words common sense gun safety measures. By adding the words common sense gun safety measures, now what they're implying is that if you are against their policies, not only are you dangerous because you're against gun safety, but you're also foolish. You're a fool because you're against common sense. So to term those, use those kinds of words to manipulate people's minds and way of thinking about this issue of gun control, and to demonize people who are against gun control, I think is wrong. And we have to be aware of it. We have to be aware that gun control advocates are doing this. And we have to be aware that these words, gun safety measures, common sense gun safety measures, common sense gun measures, we're going to hear these words over and over and over again out of the mouths of these politicians, so that they will be repeated again and again in the media to influence people. And we're going to hear people who are not knowledgeable and about the issue and not aware of how language is being manipulated. We're going to hear those people start to use these terms as well. And make no doubt about it, language affects the way we think about things. It always has, and it always will, because we think in terms of words. So my suggestion is to, first of all, be aware of how these terms are being used. And second of all, when you come across people who are using these terms or thinking in these ways, being influenced by these terms, just educate them. Engage them in a conversation in which you can talk about these things and say, well, when you use the word gun safety measures, what you're really talking about is gun control, aren't you? They may have never really thought about it. They may have been influenced and not really thought about that's really what they're talking about. Lay out the specifics and say, well, what are you talking about here? You're talking about restricting certain types of firearms. You're talking about registering firearms. You're talking about restricting certain types of accessories for firearms. So what you're talking about is gun control. And then you have to be knowledgeable enough to educate them further about why these things, these types of gun control measures, which is what they really are dangerous. We don't want gun registration because we don't want the government to know every firearm that we own. It's none of their business. It's our Second Amendment right to have these firearms, and it's not the government's business to know about the firearms that we legally own. And so on, you go on down the line. But you have to educate people, engage them in conversation to counteract this action of word manipulation, language manipulation, to form public opinion against those who are pro-Second Amendment. So I want you to be aware of that, think about that, and engage people, educate them.